Hey everybody, I thought we'd be together tonight and apparently not, and I hope that you're feeling better, Professor Watson. And I guess I will just start talking about my visit to the art museum and the piece of art that I chose. So I chose Georgia O'Keeffe and I chose the Black Cross for New Mexico. Um, and the reason I chose it is because actually next week the class that I work with in school, we're going on a field trip to the art museum. And every one of us, the chaperones, the teachers, and the students, all have to make a t-shirt about a piece of art that we were going to see at the art museum. So when the art teacher showed us the different pictures, as soon as she showed us this one, I said, well, that's the one I have to do. So we're actually going to the art museum again on the 30th for this field trip, and we had to make a recreation of the artwork. So I'm going to show you. This was the picture that I did, and it was done in fabric paint or fabric crayons, and then she ironed them on to the t-shirts because we all have to wear these next week when we go. Here is my shirt that I made to recreate it. I know the colors are off a little bit from the real picture, but I thought it was pretty cool. Anyways, we learned in third grade art about Georgia O'Keeffe, and I think her story's kind of cool. She was living till she was 99 years old. She was born in 1887, and she died in 1986. She was born in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, and then throughout her life, she was educated at the Art Institute of Chicago, actually. And a lot of her artwork was about skulls, things she would find in the desert, flowers. When she was creating all of this art, she really wasn't thought of too much because she was a woman, and the art field, the whole art world was kind of all about men at the time. She ended up actually reaching out and finding, his name is Alfred Stieglitz, and he was a renowned art gallery guy in New York, and he was married, but they actually ended up having an affair, and then he divorced his wife, they got married, and then they were together, but throughout their marriage, it wasn't a strong marriage. He kept cheating on her throughout, and then at one point she ended up going to New Mexico to relocate, and she went there in the summer of 1929, and she was in Taos, New Mexico, and she would always walk around, and then when she would come across the different animal skulls and all that, she would paint them with oil painting materials and all of that. This Black Cross of New Mexico, this one is actually symbolizing what she actually saw in the landscape. There were all the hills and the mountains in New Mexico and the sunrise and all that stuff. This cross actually is the size to have somebody crucified on. And who these crosses were set up by an actual secret Catholic brotherhood, and they were called, and I might pronounce it wrong, penitentes, and they're still there to this day, actually. They operate down there, but obviously they don't crucify anybody now. Anyways, this is quoting her, she actually said that when she would walk around the area, she said, I saw the crosses so often, and often in unexpected places, like a thin dark veil of the Catholic Church spread over the New Mexico landscape. One evening when I was living in Taos, we walked back of the Mirada, which is like a chapel where they would hold their services, toward a cross in the hills. I was told that it was a penitentine cross. The cross was large enough to crucify a man, and it was late in the night, and the cross stood out dark against the evening sky. I painted the cross against the mountain, although I never saw it that way. I painted it with a red sky, and I painted it with a blue sky and stars. For me, painting the crosses was a way of painting the country. So apparently this was how she viewed the world and all that at that time. Georgia O'Keeffe, she's considered the mother of American modernism. She was one of the only women during the whole modernism time. Um, when she painted and when she sketched and drew, she would magnify things. She would make them really big, and she simplified everything. So some of her other works, like the skulls and the flowers, that's all you see is like a close up of a flower, or like in my case with this one, it's a close up of the cross. Um, the real piece of art that we saw when we went to the museum, I took my son and we went last Friday. It was really kind of cool. We walked into the room, and totally a plain room. The paintings were just like around eye level height all the way around. There was just a thin track light and skylights. So as soon as we walked in the room, I see this, and I'm like, holy cow. Um, the piece that I based mine off of in class with the kids was a copy of a copy of a copy. But when you see it in real life, you could see the texture, you could see the dimension, and how massive that this cross just totally stood out in front, which I thought was really, really cool. She knew, so for her whole life, she basically knew she wanted to be an artist. Um, and bottom line was when she met Alfred Stieglitz, that's when her career and everything took off at that point. What else can I tell you? I can tell you that another quote that she had said was, "The men liked to put me down as the best woman painter. I think I'm one of the best." And she did. She thought very highly of herself, which, again, back in those days, for a woman to be so confident and so um, speaking of her mind, speaking of her voice, was kind of something unheard back at that time. She was very strong-willed. Some of her other paintings, like the flowers and stuff she did, they would say that they were too erotic or too sexy because of how she would zoom in on a certain part of a flower. And, she was kind of iffy in that. She really had to earn her way to where she is now. And actually at the art museum, where's the other thing I have that shows, that's from the Art Institute. This is when you go in and you get the visitor's guide. This is one of her paintings too, which is really kind of cool. I'm happy that I went and I enjoyed it, and I hope this makes sense. I wish we were just in person doing this because it would have been much better. And I can't show you my PowerPoint because that's in another file. If anything, I can send you guys the PowerPoint, but other than that, thank you all, and have a good week, have a good weekend, and hope your ankle gets better soon. Thanks.